Let me start by saying congratulations on the nomination. So well deserved, an amazing performance.
Thank you.
And this is such a rich, complex character. I was wondering, when you read the scripts, what were your first instincts on how to approach playing Tom Ripley?
Well, I suppose I think the thing that I wanted to look for was what are the benign qualities that he has rather than the more malign characteristics that he has. Because he's known for, he's known as a famous murderer. And he's a literary character and he's famous. So I suppose that the job, like with any character, is to sort of nearly, to me, it's almost to go to the opposite end of what you might expect, in the sense that I think when you're playing it, if you're doing something that's funny, I think you have to look for the soul of the what the comedy is, because it's all about, you know, telling the truth in some way. And so actually there are a huge amount of things within Tom that I found endearing, in the sense that he's somebody who's very overlooked by society, and he's somebody who's very, very talented, um, and he's solitary in some senses, and it's to be able to understand where he might be coming from, because that is the exercise that I think Patricia Highsmith wanted her readers to go through, in the sense that she wanted to create what it's like to be Tom Ripley rather than to be a victim of Tom Ripley, which was kind of, very original at the time. Um, so for that reason, I think we need to go, okay, well, I sort of like this guy, and I can be scared of him. But I can also kind of understand him a little bit as well. But then also I discovered that there's a huge amount of Tom that is unknowable. It's just unknowable. And that's okay too, because there's a lot of people who exist in the world who don't know themselves. There's a big sort of chasm, that they can't access, and I think those kind of characters should be represented as well.
So how much did so as you're saying, there's so much unknown about him. Did you create a backstory for him? Did you like try to figure out, I'm sure you did, but dive into like what drives him and, and who
Yeah,
is beyond the page and beyond the screen, but who is Ripley?
I did to a certain extent. I wouldn't have said that I formalized it. I feel like that he's a character that has secrets. And so I feel like I wanted to keep those secrets to myself. So I did kind of make decisions imaginatively, that I felt like I had to sort of keep for him, if you know what I'm saying, about what his background might be, or what his sexuality might be, or what his sort of vulnerabilities might be. But I definitely kept those to myself. We didn't rehearse for, you know, we didn't have those kind of conversations. So I made those decisions for myself. And he's a kind of an unreliable um, narrator in some ways, because he talks about his family, but I don't know if what he says is true, because he's an expert liar. So there were things that I thought of, but I didn't tend to overthink that, because I think that can actually, in some ways, reduce the character. If I'm thinking, okay, well, he was born in this exact thing, and then I'm sort of not moving for it. I'm not sure that would have served me too well. But certainly, I kind of had a sort of an emotional biography for him, if for want of a better expression.
And does that remain lock and key in your brain, or have you shared any of that, or would you be willing to share any
It
of that?
does, yeah. I haven't shared it, and I don't think
Still
it's
not?
necessary to share it, because I'm not for any sort of silly reason. It's just because I think the pleasure for the audience is to be able to ask the questions
Mhm.
about character, and part of the charm of the character and the sort of enduring nature of the character is the fact that there are so many questions about him, about which we can't answer, and um I think to answer them actually would be reductive, and audiences might think, "Oh, I'd love to know the answer to that," but actually, I don't think they do.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really like the answers. I went in as blind as I could. I knew a little bit about Ripley, but um,
Yeah.
And it's better, to explore him and to watch what's going on screen and watch so much of what you're seeing and trying to pick it apart and create that, like, inner Ripley for yourself,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
who wants it spelled out?
exactly. There's a kind of blankness to him that well, it sort of reads as blankness, but I'm quite alarmed that it looked sort of like that he was able to sort of remove himself from the situation, but it's not necessarily what I was feeling on the day, and I'm kind of pleased about that actually, because I was thinking something, but in a particular way. So the way we might look if we're waiting for a bus, um, sort of dead-eyed,
Mhm.
uh, is completely unremarkable. But if you have got that same expression when you've just murdered somebody, it's the situation that's remarkable, not necessarily the thought that he might be having. It's the fact that he might be having those thoughts at that particular time. It makes it sort of both kind of scary, but also kind of witty in some ways, or surprising at least.
Well, I was going to get into that because so much of this character you read through his eyes. These
Yeah.
pauses, glances, these really subtleties, and as a viewer, you can almost see the wheels turning in his head, but you
Mm,
don't know what step he's going to take until he takes it. And
mm.
so obviously he's kind of mapping out the conceit, but we don't know, where it's going to take us. So what was your like developing that kind of uh, internal like thinking of the character?
Well, that was really, really interesting, and it's something that Steve Zalian, our writer director, and I talked about a lot, which is about the real detail of what he has to do. There's kind of two scenes that almost take up the entire episodes about the machinations of what it's like to. It's easy to murder someone, but to get rid of a body is very difficult. And so, what was kind of interesting in some ways was the mistakes that he makes. He makes quite a few mistakes because he thinks he tries something and it doesn't work, or he forgets something, and that's the way it would be. So the audience, in that sense, the mistakes are almost kind of part of his genius, because I think there's an idea with people who are geniuses that they are completely invulnerable to making mistakes, and that's not necessarily true. They may be very adept at what they do, but they're not invulnerable to making mistakes. And so thinking about that, and was really, really important, and to go, well, where would he do that, or why would he look for that first, or what. And so I think the interesting thing for the audience is to see that there's a real intention in his thoughts, even if they don't know what the intention is. I think that's kind of makes it gripping. And I think that's what she does sort of beautifully in the book, is that you get real access, pages and pages of access to his inner thoughts. And the challenge is, how do you make that televisual, and I think you do that by allowing time uh, to for the audience, for those things to sink in, and really to watch a character think, which is really kind of audacious in some ways, that you really just go, wow, there's nothing is happening, but something is emerging.
Yeah, it's a treat to watch because as you said, he does make mistakes, and
Um,
so you're watching him kind of step into his own trap and like, wait, I just said this, but now that contradicts, and then
yeah,
you're pausing, like holding your breath, like what's going to happen, and then he comes up with something like, did he sell it? And then the actors you have to work against, their glares looking back, you're like, are they
yes,
seeing right through this disguise, or are they like
mm,
us, still not sure where everything stands,
right.
besides knowing that you're a murderer?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it. It's the other character's reaction to him as well. That's also really interesting. Um, and I think, with Dakota particularly, she played some scenes, and Steve would ask her to play it like she was really suspicious of him, and sometimes to play exactly the same scene where she's no clue at all. So then I suppose it just emerges, and you sort of play with that a little.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I was like wondering, there's the looks on the faces, with the detective and the
Yeah.
hotel staff and so many. You're like, is this? Wait, we have a few episodes left. Is he about to get taken down? It seems like
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
on to
Well,
him, and
exactly. You should feel that constantly that he's just narrowly avoiding, getting caught.
so what was the preparation like? Because you had to speak with an accent, but you had to do
Mhm.
it pretty at a good amount. Did you know Italian beforehand, or did you?
No, I learned
Okay.
Italian for about 4 months before we started.
Wow.
Yeah, and yeah, I didn't want to just like learn the lines. I wanted to have an understanding of the character. So yeah, I just learned Italian, and I had an amazing Italian teacher, and I used to do that on Zoom when I was in London, and then I went to Italy, and that continued, and then the challenge, I mean, it was difficult. It was intimidating because he would be good at speaking Italian because he's talented. So yeah, that was a big part of it. Yeah.
That was really impressive.
Oh,
I go to
thanks.
Italy, and I try to say a few words, and my daughters say, "Stop trying to sound Italian because you sound terrible." But
No, but
we
it's a
pulled it
nice thing
off.
to do. It's a nice thing to do. I think people appreciate a little bit of, a little splattering of the language when you go abroad.
I try my best.
Yeah.
And then so you get the boat scene. I mean, was it as
Mm.
harrowing to shoot that as it was to watch? Because I mean, that took like several of my fears and crushed them all together. And then
Really? Yeah.
I was like, oh, my heart was pounding. I really couldn't watch it. What was
Yeah.
it like shooting that one?
It was pretty arduous. Yeah, it really was. I don't love um deep water either. My deep water kind of freaks me out a little bit. And there was certainly a huge amount of deep water. And yeah, it's really difficult to get back onto a boat from deep water. So it was hard, really, really hard. And Steve Zalian likes to do a lot of coverage. So, it wasn't just like, oh, two takes and then you're done. We were lifting those rocks I was lifting those rocks, and it was really fun. It was fun kind of stuff, but it was definitely arduous, and it took a long time to film. I'd say that sequence all in all probably took about a month to film the entire thing. And we did it in various different locations, but I'm really proud of that episode. I think it's very gripping, and I love the fact that there's hardly any dialogue in it, and that the storytelling is so expert. I think Steve really worked hard in that, and we really thought a lot about, that's to talk about mistakes, the mistakes that he might make, and seeing him think, and it's beautifully shot, and some of those angles are just truly beautiful. So yeah, I feel very, very proud of it.
Yeah, it's one of the most beautiful, most vile scenes I've seen. And
Yeah,
beauty and the vileness of what's actually going on there. But it's like amazing. But also, like I said, I don't know if I can watch it again. It
yeah,
hits on too much, and it
yeah.
does it so well. And bravo on that.
Thank you.
That's when I was totally locked in. I was like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
I watched this with my wife, and we're find ourselves rooting for you. And we're like, why? Wait, this is not a good man. What is it
yeah.
about the character that you think that why people actually want him to get away with it?
What's a really interesting question, that people have asked me, have you ever met a Tom Ripley type character? And my response sort of always is, well, everybody has a little bit of Tom Ripley in them. I'm not necessarily saying that people are murderous, but that idea of not being invited to the party, I think a lot of people can relate to. Um, he really is gifted. He's very talented at what he does. He does it. He forges. He's an expert forger, but he does it with great passion. He's also never been exposed to the things that some people just completely take for granted. And when he's submerged into a world where these kind of less talented people are writing books and painting pic pictures and calling themselves artists with such a degree of entitlement that he would never assume to have. I think something in him goes, whoa, hold on a second. There's a kind of, I suppose it is a rage of some description kind of emerges in him. And in some ways, the the injustice, the injustice of the way beauty in the world is doled out, where some people are have such access to beauty and art and education, and some people don't, is a cause for rage. I can understand why people feel like I'm a human being. I deserve that as much as this person. And particularly if you've got something to say and you're an artist and you're being on. So I think that's kind of what she's talking a little bit about and why we sort of root for him. Um, and he's a lone figure, you know, he doesn't have a lot of friends. And I think just spending that amount of time with a character, of course, you're gonna you're gonna sort of seep into their bones a little. And I think it's very clever of Steve to have, particularly from you mentioned episode 3, where you think, oh God, I've spent so much time, like a luxurious amount of time with this character where he's not saying anything and he's on his own. So we're sort of in his we sort of dance to his own rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm is takes its time and sometimes it's very fast paced.
So you touched upon this just a little bit earlier, but I'm curious, did you watch the series all the way through? And if you did, what was your response to actually sit on the outside and be outside of Tom Ripley and observe?
Yeah, I always find watching stuff that I'm in quite difficult. I don't have an easy time with that. Um, but I did want to see this. So I saw it in a screening room in New York. And Ben, my agent, came along with me because I didn't want to watch it on my own because I just find it almost impossible to be impartial. Um, and yeah, it doesn't. It's remarkable how much screen time there is with one character. You know, it's something I really say a lot about Ripley, but usually a TV series is about possibly a family or a police department or a village or a hospital or even a couple. But it's quite rare to have just spent so much time with just one character. Just to have that one character have that amount of screen time. So there was an awful lot of looking at my own big stupid face, which, you know, I don't. And of course, I'm looking
It
at
was a
it.
treat.
Oh, thank you. But it's you know, you're looking at it, and you know, I'm remembering my time there, and I'm remembering Italy, and whether I was lonely or whether I wasn't feeling well or whether I was happy or you know, just the beauty, the beautiful landscape. I saw so much of Italy, and you know, it was a year of my life. I took a year almost to the day. Uh, and so, but yes, I certainly was absolutely amazed by the way the show looks. I think it's totally um, unique and beautiful. The cinematography is just, I knew that it was going to be beautiful, but seeing it on the big screen, it was really, really special.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, well, we close out with 3 words to describe Tom Ripley.
Tom Ripley in 3 words, um, mysterious, um, vulnerable, and dangerous.
I like it. And before I go, I just want to say that I adored your work in All of Us Strangers. I
Oh,
lost my
thank
parents
you.
over the last few years, and your
I'm
work on the
sorry.
film gutted me, but it also kind of healed me. I
Oh, I'm so
appreciate what you
pleased.
did there.
Thank you so
Really
much. My
beautiful.
own mother died just 4 months ago. It was the last film she
Oh,
saw of mine, and
sorry
so
about that.
yeah, it's tough when you lose your parents, right?
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
beautiful to have something like that, or great to
yeah,
have something like that. That's beautiful. It
yeah,
kind of changes the way you look at it, and
yeah.
like I said, it does allow a little bit of feeling, and I wouldn't have
It does a little bit of
seen it that
feeling.
way without the film.
Oh well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, and best of luck going forward. I hope to see a
Thank
lot more of your work. You do really good with one-word titles, so
Yeah, just the
you're,
one.
yeah, you're nailing
No.
them. So,
Yeah, pressure next.
have a great one.
Thanks, Emil. All the
Bye.
best. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye now.